In a Fox News interview yesterday morning, senior White House advisor Jared Kushner criticized protesters who mobilized after the killing of George Floyd, and also said this.
There's been a lot of discussion about the issues that were needed in the black community for the last years, but particularly it intensified after the George Floyd situation. And you saw a lot of people who were just virtue signaling. They'd go on Instagram and cry, or they would, put a slogan on their jersey or write something on a basketball court. And quite frankly, that was doing more to polarize the country than it was to bring people forward. And one thing we've seen in a lot of the black community, which is mostly Democrat, is that President Trump's policies are the policies that can help people break out of the problems that they're complaining about, but he can't want them to be successful more than they want to be successful. And what you're seeing throughout the country now is a groundswell of support in the black community, because they're realizing that all the different bad things that the media and the Democrats have said about President Trump are not true.
Shawna Thomas.
So I guess that's why they don't let him talk in front of cameras much? That's shocking on so many levels. Shawna, why don't you just take us through all the shocking things that Jared Kushner, by the way, a kid who inherited millions and millions of dollars, was born in a multimillionaire, and his daddy paid his way into Harvard, talking about black people not wanting to help themselves.
Yeah, the level of condescension there is a little bit off the charts. And I do want to say something. In the last hour I was on with Casey and Way Too Early, and I realized that one thing I said was that maybe Jared Kushner doesn't understand his words. I was literally condescending Jared Kushner the way Jared Kushner was condescending black Americans. And the difference is, okay, I thought about that and I realized that, and he needs to take responsibility for his words, and hopefully he will talk to someone and try to understand what he said came off. But two, hopefully he can learn from this. I'm not holding my breath on that, but hopefully he can learn. He can learn that the George Floyd situation wasn't a situation. It was the death of a man caught on camera as someone, held him down for minutes and minutes and minutes that we all saw. But I also think one thing that happened over the summer, along with the protests, along with the conversations about police brutality and reforming police departments, was people put up these black boxes on Instagram and companies put them up, right? And the idea was about listening to the black community about the problems, about systemic racism, about their lives, about how they feel every single day in this country. And it is clear that even though Jared Kushner apparently is having conversations with Ice Cube, and maybe something will come of that, he is not listening to what people are saying in the streets. And maybe he is distracted by, I wish he was distracted by COVID, because if they were doing something on COVID that was actually concrete and made sense, that would help the black community. That is one thing they could do. But he doesn't appear to have heard any of what people have been saying and screaming out in the country for the last 4 or 5 months, or years and years and years. This is not a new problem, but the new light on it, I think, has caused a lot of white people to actually listen and think about this. It would be nice if Jared Kushner could take that into his heart ever so slightly.
And stop and think. He talks about virtue signaling. Sometimes people just actually stop for a moment after they watch a man choke to death for 9 minutes, and they sit and they start looking at all the things that have happened through the years and start asking whether we can do better as a country. And maybe Jared doesn't understand it, but there's the old saying out of Kill a Mockingbird, where you need to try to walk another mile in a man's shoes to understand what he's going through. Well, that's not even what was asked of any people this year. Just ask that they stop and think about what's happening in this country and how we can make this country a better place. And Jared Kushner, what he said was nothing short of outrageous. And I wonder if Ice Cube, I guess Ice Cube associates himself with all those remarks, associates himself with the Charlottesville remarks, associates himself with the shithole country remarks. I guess Ice Cube associates himself with Donald Trump calling Hispanics breeders. I guess Ice Cube associates himself with Jared Kushner saying that Donald Trump can't help black people if black people don't want to help themselves. I guess that's what Ice Cube associates himself with. Nice career move.
Yeah. Well,
nice career move, Ice Cube. That's really something at this stage when you have seen such racial animus coming out of the White House being stirred up, that somebody like Ice Cube or Kanye West are deciding, yeah, hey, this seems like a good move to back Donald Trump and Jared Kushner. Let that one sink in.
Look.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.